We will be designing on a 30-inch twig wreath. In the central portion, this runs approximately 14 inches, and with all the twigs running around, it creates about a 30-inch wreath overall. I will have these listed on our Etsy page with a special code for you guys to get them at a reduced cost. We do make them here. If they are too large for you or whatever you're designing, you can always trim the individual stems and create it a little bit smaller. I left this in its natural state. Some of the pieces are jetting out even further. We are creating a rather natural themed wreath today. And what we're going to start off with is 3 of these stems that came from Hobby Lobby. These are in the year-round section, so you can get a head start and pick these up now. They were $8.99, 50% off, so for about $4.50 a stem. And the item number for this is 814939, and you'll notice that it has a full open bloom and also a smaller bloom. Usually we hold off on using these, but for today's purpose we are going to be using some of the larger hydrangea leaves. So we picked up 3 of these stems, so in total we have 3 larger open blooms and 3 smaller, less open blooms. So we're going to be placing these in kind of a triangular formation today, and then in between each of them we're going to add a couple additional leaves and the smaller blooms as well. When designing on our standard 18-inch grapevine wreath, we usually add our greenery first, bulk it up, and then begin adding our focal flowers. But since we don't want to add too much to the outside of this design, we really want to showcase these twig wreaths. We are not going to be adding too much greenery towards the center and too many flowers. The largest flowers we're going to be adding are 3 of these, like I talked about before. And the reason we're adding them first is because we're going to come back in and fill in with some smaller flowers. So I'd rather get the bulkiness out of the way and make sure that we actually like it. So I cut these stems rather short, and we're applying a generous amount of hot glue towards the base. The stems are only about 1 inch long. And the reason for that is because we don't want them to jet out too much. So I'll make sure it's poked in towards the center, just like that. And now we'll come back in with a second one. Right there. And then we'll come back in with a third one on the opposite side. And make sure there is good contact with all of the twigs. You don't really want them to just be sitting on the surface, so try to go around the closest part of the wreath to make sure you have good contact with the bunch of stems. If you place them a little bit further out, there's less twigs, as you can see, and the likeliness of that falling out is a lot more higher than if you place it closer towards the center of the wreath. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come back in with our 3 smaller buds. And notice that we cut these about 5.5 to 6 inches long. That way we can keep the greenery and we don't have to add it separate. So for these, we're going to work them in the same way the greenery is facing. So as you can see, the twigs, are going uphill here. So we're going to place this going uphill. We'll place this one going that way and this one going downhill. Again, try to keep it nice and close to the center. And then now we're going to add our final one. Just like that. So now everything else we're going to be adding in, including some of our cherry blossoms, we are going to try to go within the same motion of the wreath. We don't want to go against the grain. So everything from here on out, besides the 3 large hydrangeas, are going to work in that motion. We're going to be placing some of this variegated foliage. This is also year-round at Hobby Lobby, and as you can see, I already broke down some of the pieces so we could add it. We are going to break down 2 of these stems. They were $5.99, 50% off, and the item number for this is 476 564, and I carry this all year round. I use this in many of my floral wreaths. So I just broke down the stems as long as I can, and this is a nice greenery that we can add some pieces going uphill, away from the wreath, because they're not too bulky and it's not going to take away from the twigs. I would shy away from using boxwood in this particular design. I think boxwood is a little too bulky. We want to keep it nice and airy. We don't want to add nothing too heavy. So we're not filling in all that much. As you can see, we left a little gap there. If we place them too far apart, we'll definitely have some pieces left over that we can bulk it up a little bit. But we do want to keep it very open. We don't want to add too much greenery to take away from the twigs. If you cannot wait for me to list these for sale as I create them, you could always purchase them from Hobby Lobby or Michaels. They are a little pricey. They run between $25 and $30, but I'm sure you could use a 50% off or even a 60% off coupon for them. But even though the price of these wreaths, the bases, are rather expensive, you don't have to add too much of the material to it, and you still can significantly charge a lot of money for these. So just keep that in mind. Yes, it's a little pricier for the base, but people will pay extra money for this particular design with the twigs. Also, for this wreath, I would shy away from using any stems that are rather soft. So as you can see, we're not using any ficus leaves, because if we broke them down, the stems are a little soft. And the reason for that is because I really wouldn't be placing any steel picks in this. I'd be just trying to feed these stems directly into the weave of the twigs. So we have a couple more. The most important part is to make sure you have a good amount of hot glue and there's good contact with the twigs. Then we also have a little piece right here that broke off, so we'll just tuck that in right there. So this is what we have so far. We used 2 of the stems, so $6 worth of the variegated greenery. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come back in with some of my favorite spring flowers, which are these lavender. These were $1.50, they were on clearance, but they do carry these year round. For some reason they put them on clearance last spring. The item number for this is 9141209. And anytime you see something that says floral with the white circle tag, those generally mean that they carry them year round. The original price was, I believe, $2.99. So these are more of the brighter purple. And they also carry something a little bit more darker, which are these. These they carry year-round as well. It just depends on what you want to add and what color scheme you're going for. These were $3.99, 50% off. The item number for this is 369181. So basically everything we're going to be adding to this is stuff you can pick up year-round at Hobby Lobby, which is awesome if you want to get a head start for the season, which is exactly what we're doing in this case. So we have removed all the flowers, and you'll notice that we have some foliage left over. We'll definitely be saving this and placing it throughout the design as well, towards the center. And I've broken down 2 of them. two pieces that are about 5 or 6 inches long. So I usually cut right about an inch below the closest set of leaves. And we'll be working these in the same direction. So this wreath would be perfect throughout the entire spring season. This would be perfect for Easter. You could add some Easter eggs if it doesn't sell early on. And I also think this would be perfect throughout summer. A lot of people like just simple floral wreaths. This design in particular, people a lot of the times have the twig wreaths within their house. So this would be perfect in a mudroom, in a kitchen, even a bathroom using the lavender. So we have 2 flowers left. So depending on what florals you use, this wreath can cost between $20 and $30 just for florals. Right now where we stand, we're looking at about $16 for the flowers, since the lavender was on sale for $1.50 a stem. But I think we're going to pepper in a 3rd stem just to bulk it up a little bit more. Keep in mind, you don't want it to be too lush towards the outside. You can have as many flowers as you want towards the inside, but I'd like to keep it a little less around the perimeter. So where the flowers and greenery we worked in towards the outside, we still kept a couple inches where it's just strictly twigs. So we're going to break down a 3rd stem. So the 3rd stem we broke down did have a missing flower, so we do have 1 less flower than we worked with the other 2 sprays. But notice that the leaves are a lot longer. So these pieces we only cut, for most of them, only about 3 or 4 inches. Some are even 5. And the reason for that is that we have the majority of them around the perimeter. And as you can see, we kind of have a ring around. And what we're going to do is we're going to come back in and place some of them closer to the center to tie in that blue closer towards the middle of the wreath. So whenever designing floral wreaths, you never want your flowers to be all in a line like that. You want them to be at varying heights, varying lengths. We'll come back in down here. So we have 1 left. That we'll pepper in right here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to break down that greenery that we had and fill in towards the center a little bit more. The nice thing about this greenery is it kind of reminds me of lamb's-ear or dusty miller, where it's kind of very soft and feathery, and it also has that nice spring color. So we're going to break these down into smaller pieces. It truly doesn't make a difference how long they are. We just want to make sure that they're only long enough to go within a 2 or 3 inch gap around the central portion of the wreath. So now that we broke down some pieces to about 3 or 4 inches in length, we can begin adding them towards the center of the wreath. And we'll be adding these the same way we've been adding all the flowers, the same direction. Whenever you have good flowers like the lavender that has nice foliage and you're not using all of the foliage, always break it down or save it, either to use as a filler in wreaths like this or to cover the backs of your wreaths. This greenery, of course, wouldn't be a good use for that, covering the back of your wreaths. But for filling in towards the central portion of the wreath, this greenery is perfect for it. And it just bulks up the design a little bit. And it does save you money by not having to purchase additional greenery. Okay, so this is what we have so far. We're going to begin adding even more hydrangeas now, but we are going to break these apart. So I'm using lime green. You could also be using white. I wouldn't do any other color besides those two, just to keep the pink and the dark purple as your main colors. So stick with an off-white or even an ultra-white or a lime green. The nice thing about these hydrangeas is that they pull off. So each little cluster of flowers pulls off very easily. So I went throughout one stem and I broke them apart. You're not going to want to add them in their entirety to in between each of the three. It would just kind of ruin the effect that we're going for. We don't want to compete with the pink ones. We just want to accent them. So whatever hydrangeas you pick up, just make sure you are breaking them apart. And if they don't come off this easily, what you could do is just snip them off. So we're going to be placing these towards the outside, and then we're going to come back in and place some towards the center. We're not going to be placing them in a perfect circle. We're going to offset them. So this one's coming towards the outside. We'll come back in and place one closer towards the center. Reason being is we don't want it to be perfect. We don't want to have all our flowers look as though they are perfectly straight. We want this to be a natural wildflower themed wreath. So by offsetting them like this, it adds some depth and making it a lot more realistic than if we place them all perfectly. So we're not doing the same effect, the Biedermeier style, which means flower to flower, kind of like a flower wall, as we did in a couple months ago in the cross. So for those of you that were in the group a couple months ago, we created a cross using these exact hydrangeas, and we placed them perfectly in a line. So far we've broken down one. You could stop here or you could place in a few more. Since I have so many of these hydrangeas, I am going to break into a second one. But what you could always do is pick up one lime green one and one white one and kind of space them out a little further apart, and then use the leftover pieces in another project. Most of all of our floral designs, you can be breaking down your hydrangeas like this and peppering them in. I think it'll enhance any wreath that we create in the group. So just keep that in mind. If you don't use all of your flowers in a specific project, you can always use them elsewhere. And since we're breaking them down, they don't truly look like hydrangeas. They look like little filler flowers. So we're going to place one more in the lower left-hand corner underneath this one and that one. Just like that. And we also have one little piece that fell on the floor, so we might as well use that. And we'll just place it over there. So this is what we have so far. So our final flower we'll be adding are these little ranunculus. They came in a spray of about 5 or 6 flowers, and then some that are unopened buds with a little pink peeking through. The reason we're adding these is because I want to bring out a little bit more of this pink, and as you can see, the ranunculus matches perfectly. These come from the year-round collection at Hobby Lobby as well. They were $6.99, 50% off, and the item number for this is 1397132. They carry these also in white, I believe ivory, kind of a buttery yellow, and a dark lime green as well. So we're going to be placing some of these. We're only using one spray, so we do have to make sure that where we're placing them is kind of throughout the entire design. We're evenly spacing them so that we don't have too many on one side and not enough on another. And we'll be working these in the same direction as all the other flowers. So for starters, what we're going to do is we're going to place one in between each of the hydrangeas. Just like that. And then we have a couple more. So now we'll place some of the unopened buds with the little bit of pink peeking through. And also the nice thing about the ranunculus is that it has very, very pretty foliage. This foliage is kind of like the lavender foliage where it's kind of feathery. So we'll take some of these leaves and place them towards the center. Of course, this is optional. But if you didn't want to use these leaves in this project, I would certainly encourage you guys to save them and use them in a different project, just to get your money's worth. So this design doesn't require a bow. If you wanted to place one in, I would do one early on, and I'll show you guys that later on as spring is closer. But I'd work my bow in early on, and then I'd pepper in some flowers between the loops. Okay, and our last leaf will go right there. And there you go, you guys. A very, very simple, natural twig wreath for spring. Again, I'll have these wreaths available on my Etsy page with an exclusive code just for you guys to purchase it at a reduced cost. I like to help you guys save money any way I can. And since I am going to be the one creating these, I'll definitely, give you guys a significant cost cut. But if you guys wanted to make it a little fancier, you could always add a bird's nest. For today's design, we are going to hold off on doing that, and we'll be using this that we picked up from Craft Outlet a little later on.